Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our third in the Transition Talk series. And we are joined by an absolutely wonderful guest. Now, for those of you who are around the National Veterans Memorial and Museum quite frequently, you might have seen her on the Rally Point back in March. But we are once again honored and privileged to be joined by Christine Schwartz, who is, in addition to also being a phenomenal U.S. Army veteran, is the CEO of Service to Schools, which is a nonprofit organization that helps veterans transition to some of the best, and I do literally mean the best, universities in the United States and schools that fit their needs as they can both get their education and continue their journey in life post-transition. So, Christine, welcome. I understand that you are also in a bit of transition yourself right now, so thank you for making the time. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here. Always in transition, still living the active duty lifestyle, and we're in the middle of a PCS.
Yeah. So, okay, we'll start there a little bit. Is that one of the things about these talks is that how transition is always constant, right? And you transition when you're in the military. You're an Army officer and you're a combat veteran. Now you're a military spouse. What's sort of the difference? Like, because you PCS yourself before,
Yeah.
I mean, and things like that. But now you're sort of on the other side of it, where you're not the service member moving. You're the spouse. Is there any difference to that? Is there anything that's sort of crazy about things like that, or how's that sort of how are you sort of feeling about that compared to previous experiences?
Yeah. Well, when I was on active duty, I wasn't married and I didn't have kids. So it was
Okay.
move yourself, move yourself, go to wherever you go on post to schedule everything, do all that. They come by, pick up your stuff. I mean, it's just so much more complicated now. Switch schools, find new pediatricians, line everything up, find a house. So I would say it's gotten progressively more complicated. But it's okay. We're used to it at this point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, I want to back up a little bit because I think it's an interesting lineage and story about kind of how you joined the military in the first place. For anybody who's been to the museum, anybody who's read the book, The 20-Year War, Christine and her sister Katie are photographed together, and they both served simultaneously. And so if you could share a little bit about your story, like what inspired you to serve, kind of a little bit of your family history, because I think that is definitely carries a small piece of this story, of your guys' story. So if you could just share a little bit about that.
Definitely. So yes, like Dan mentioned, my sister is on active duty. So I am, or I was, a fifth generation Army officer. We've had, um, members of our family serving in the Army and in different wars since really the Revolutionary War. So I guess it was always in my blood in a way. My dad retired from the Army, so I grew up around the military. I have immense respect for the military, for veterans, Army, Navy, Air Force, you name it, Coast Guard. And so it was always a career field or a profession that I had thought about. In high school, I thought, oh, maybe I'll apply to West Point. I didn't do that. I ended up going to Virginia Tech, just having a normal college experience. And my senior year of college, which was 2008, I woke up one day and I mentioned to my sister, hey, maybe I'll join the Army. I feel a little lost. I don't really know what I want to do when I graduate. So my sister was super excited, and she was a captain at the time, and she had me at a recruiting station the next day, meeting with a recruiter. And before I knew it, I was preparing to go to OCS, to go to basic training when I graduated from college, and then on to officers candidate school. And I commissioned as a quartermaster officer, and then spent 5 years on active duty and loved it and had a ton of fun. Really grew as a leader, grew as a professional, learned a lot about myself, learned a lot about the world. But again, I guess it was in my blood, in a way. Like, the Army, the military is a bit of a family profession. I'm not sure the stats on that, but it is some high ratio of service members that are, if it's a son, a daughter, a sister, brother, cousin, like it's almost a family business.
And That's incredible. And I kind of have a follow-up question too. So like, especially as you're developing yourself, as an Army officer, um, how important was it to like have your family to like lean on them and ask questions about leadership and development and like being just a good soldier in general? Like how was that dynamic? Was it helpful for you? And just give us a little insight there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really helpful to have my sister to be that mentor, especially when I was a platoon leader, going from a platoon leader to an XO, that junior military path, junior military officer path that you follow. I had a platoon of all males. So having my sister to talk to about that, ask questions, like how you handle different situations was super helpful. And then not just even advice, but just the like camaraderie, the conversations that I could have with my dad or my sister or other family members that had served in the military were so much different than I could have with people that hadn't served. And so when I was deployed, even, those were people I called a lot. I called my dad a lot. I called my sister a lot. And I leaned on them for support because I knew that they were some of the only people that could really relate with me at different times.
I'm really interested too because we've already talked about how you're now a military spouse, and you did 5 years and you decided to leave the service, especially with sort of having this family lineage, and like, so what sort of inspired that decision? I think for some people it's pretty straightforward, but like you said, this is a family legacy. You're interacting with it. So what inspired you to decide to leave the service, and sort of what did you do in sort of that transition, and how was that for you?
Yeah. So I did decide to get out, and I actually went into the reserves after I got out for a couple of years because I knew I would really miss the Army, to be honest. But at the time when I got out, a lot of it was just about the fact that I was engaged to another Army officer, and I had this realization that I didn't want to necessarily have a dual military family. I have a ton of respect for dual military couples. I mean, that is a hard lifestyle. And it was just a decision that we came to at that time, like, hey, I'm going to get out because we wanted to have kids, moving around all the time, those sorts of things. We wanted to make it a little easier on us. So that was really the reason that I decided to get out. But then when I did, I really wanted to find another job that fulfilled me like the Army did, where I was serving a greater good, where I was working with people, where I could wake up every day and be excited to go to work. So as I did transition out, because I knew I wasn't going to be in the Army, it was important to find a job that filled my cup up in that way.
That's fantastic. And I think that's such an important thing that a lot of veterans potentially miss out on, is like finding that thing that, like you said, fills your cup every day, and motivates you to wake up in the morning and to be excited about what you're going to do, and especially feel that same sort of giving back, that selfless service that you feel in the military. So once you were seeking that out and you were finding that thing that was going to fill up your cup every day, like how did you eventually find your way into services schools? Because I do want to talk about that quite a bit, especially about the program and everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how I found my ways, because so the first two jobs I had, they weren't my favorite, we'll say. I was working for a tech company, another smaller startup tech company. And I felt like I wasn't doing, I guess, anything of influence. Like I wasn't making anybody's lives better in a way. And like, I'm big on that. Like I want to get up every day and feel like I made a difference to someone. I helped somebody in some way. And I didn't get that feeling. And I also didn't feel like they necessarily valued my experiences and my like different leadership aspects that I brought to the table. I felt that I was kind of undervalued. And so I did end up leaving a few companies because I would say, hey, I want to work on this project, or I think I would be good at that. And it was kind of like, nah, They weren't willing to let me try. They, especially one of the companies I worked for, they really valued, I will say, other employees because of certain school credentials. And so I decided to look at other sectors, and that led me to the nonprofit sector eventually, where obviously you are making an impact every day. And granted, there's tons of for-profits where you can be making an impact as well. But, in the nonprofit space, it's all about, what's the purpose? What's the nonprofit's mission? Whose lives are they changing? Are they in, I work with veterans, but do you work with veterans? Do you work with the environment? Do you work with children? And I knew anywhere in the nonprofit space I could do something where I felt like, wow, this makes me feel good about myself, and not only me feel good about themselves, but it's helping other people.
So, I mean, you do so much as far as being the CEO of Service to Schools, and Dan and I are very familiar with that program. It was one of those things we were getting ready to write the book, and we heard through the grapevine that you might be interested. We're like, wow, like that's one of the the nonprofits that's always thought of very highly. Can you sort of take the audience who might not know what Service to Schools is, what is sort of the organization, what do you guys do, and then sort of describe the impact? Because I think that transition from service to getting your degree and setting yourself up for success, like that was maybe one of the roughest points for me. And I would have killed in 2004 to have an organization like Service to Schools. So can you sort of talk the audience through that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So I didn't start Service to School. I'm fortunate enough to lead the organization now, but it has been around since 2011, and it was started by 3 West Pointers and a former admissions dean. And at that time, especially in 2011, transition programs were really not focused on education at all. So all of these service members, we serve in the military, and we get this awesome benefit. We get the GI Bill. I mean, honestly, I truly believe it's the best benefit that the DoD gives us. So we get out and we have the GI Bill, and we can go back to any school for free, essentially. You can go reimagine your life. And veterans aren't necessarily using that GI Bill in the best way possible. Oftentimes they're going to schools that don't have the best reputation, don't have high graduation rates. They aren't getting great advice on what to major in. And so they're essentially oftentimes wasting their GI Bill getting a degree that's not going to enhance their future. I mean, you go back to school to get a degree so you can get a good job, so you can do something that you really want to do, that sort of thing. So especially in 2011, the founders, Gus and Tim and Khalil, they wanted to make a program where people were being advised on how to use that GI Bill in the best way possible. Like, hey, let's help you get into a great business school. Let's help you get into law school. Let's help you get into a great undergrad program. So like I said, you can get this meaningful degree and go on and get a great job and really thrive after service. So we built a program where we connect veterans with mentors and our staff, and they walk them through all aspects of the college and graduate school application process. So things from school selection to test preparation to helping you with your personal statements and essays. And we help you create a really strong application, and we connect you with schools that we think are the best fit for your future. And then we help you hopefully get into those schools through that application enhancement and through that advice. So again, you can get into these schools, use that GI Bill, and just keep crushing it. Really.
That's fantastic, and I love the fact that you said the GI Bill is probably one of the best benefits that the DoD gives us. Because I was literally just having this conversation with some non-veterans that I work with. And they were talking about all the other benefits that they thought were the strongest benefits leaving the military. But, every time I talk to somebody who's about to serve or who's transitioning out, I tell them all the time, it's like, hey, find something that you're going to use your GI Bill on. And especially getting into some of those, more difficult to get into schools is such a huge asset that Service to School provides. And like Tom, I kind of wish I would have known that this program was around when I first
Yeah.
went to school. I wouldn't have changed. Looking back, I'm glad I went the path that I went. But there's certainly some schools that I wanted to get into that I was like, there's no way I'm getting in just because of my experience, and there's no way I'm going to qualify for this and things like that. But having somebody in an organization there to kind of guide you through that process, uh, again, is such a huge asset to veterans that I hope many who are listening to this, or future veterans, or those that are transitioning right now, like they hear this and understand, like there are
Yeah.
organizations out there like yours, that are looking out for them, that are trying to get them set up for the best future that they could possibly have.
And it's so powerful because I mean I'm sort of one military generation behind Dan, and when I got out in 2004, I was one of the last handful of people on the wait list at Georgetown that didn't get in. And it was one of those things where it's like I just threw it together. I threw it blind. Some random dude down at Fort Benning that was a Georgetown alum that liked the military wrote my letter of recommendation after meeting me for like 15 minutes, which I was deeply appreciative of, and like I got, he's like, he seems like he could do well. And it's just, um, I always wonder, I ultimately went to, University of Illinois, like I still got into a good school,
Yeah.
but just that ability, you know what I'm saying? And the ability to make sure that it looks good, knowing how to navigate some of those things. But the thing that, and I think you said it, and I just want to re-hit on it, is like talking to the veteran and finding out the school that works for them the best. I think that's also so deeply powerful. The fact that the veteran feels heard, right? Especially in the transition where so often you're like, what is going on here? That's this whole new world. I think that's super important.
And there's a lot of just misinformation about what a good school looks like. So, I mean, 60% of enlisted veterans are first generation college students. So that means they're the first member of their family to go to college. And so I think it's extremely important to say, hey, there's 3,000 possible undergrad institutions you could go to in the US. And maybe one person's telling you another thing and this person's telling you this. It's so much information to sift through. So to get to the bottom of, hey, why do you want to go back to college? And let's line this up so you are having not only the best possible experience, but you're getting the best possible education, which is going to lead to the best outcomes. That's what it's all about. And I think in transition, we talk so much about jobs, like everything's focused on jobs, right? It's what are you going to do when you get out of the military? What's your first job going to be? And I'm like, why is that the first conversation? You can go to school for free. It should be, hey, where are you going to go to school so you can then get that first job? Like that makes so much sense to me. And I think the more that we talk about it and encourage people to make higher education the first step before the job, again, there's going to be better and better outcomes.
Going to an elite school, or maybe not an elite school, and getting a diploma and a degree is not the only path to, like, you can use your GI Bill for so many different things, to just get upskilled, to get certifications, to just be prepared for the next job. And I agree wholeheartedly. Like I wish, I think it's called TAP, the Transition Assistance Program, back in the day. I don't know if they renamed it now, but like it was like you said, it was like how to write a resume, how to be prepared for your next career. It was hardly mentioned. It was a fleeting comment, I think, that was like, hey, you also have a GI Bill, and let me help you get into a school. It was never that conversation. So yeah, I think that's an important thing to bring to the forefront, and remind veterans that they have this asset that they can lean on to be prepared, for their future and for their next career. As we kind of wrap up a little bit, I do want to talk a little bit about like, what's your next mission? What are you doing? Anything exciting moving forward? And then also just kind of some last advice that you would give to some veterans, especially those that are transitioning. I know you talked about, obviously looking at education, but just in general, some advice for veterans.
Sure. So yeah, general advice in the transition. I mean, you all went through your own. It wasn't easy for me. I applied to so many jobs. I thought about so many different pathways. So I think that starting early is important. And when I say start early, I mean just really thinking through the logical steps you need to take to transition. It's going to come up suddenly. All of a sudden, one day you're turning in all your gear at CIF, and then you're expected to be a civilian the next day. So it's like, how do you line everything up so you live where you want to live, and maybe you go back to school, or like we're saying, we get that first job that we want to get. So take the long road and be methodical about it. And then networking, building a network. I think being open to advice, having a lot of conversations, asking for help. I think all those things are important. And then there's so many great organizations out there that are there to support people in the transition, and that can almost be overwhelming. So again, as you seek out advice, ask people, hey, what organizations were the most helpful to you as you transitioned out? Who should I turn to for what? And having a bit of a plan, because it's not going to be the easiest thing you've ever done, and you're gonna miss different aspects of the military. So just be prepared.
So, Christine, I just want to thank you truly from the bottom of my heart, especially as a lead edge 9/11 post 9/11 veteran. When this was the wild west, and I think that the advice that you just gave is so powerful and is so relevant. Thank you so much for both taking the time today, also being a part of the exhibition, the 20-year war, our next greatest generation, the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. This is normally where we're like, do you have any last words of wisdom or any piece of advice you'd like to share? But I feel like you just kind of did the normal speech we asked people for a second ago. So I don't want to put you on the spot if you've got anything else, but if you have any sort of parting words of wisdom, which you just have been doling out in buckets today, we'd love to hear it.
Well, use your GI Bill, of course. I mean, that is something I tell everyone to do. Take advantage of that. And again, take advantage of the resources that are available to you, and have fun. I mean, this is also, I think we almost make it scary in a way. Have fun in the transition process, meet new people. You are a civilian now. You can have a whole different group of friends, live in a new city. So embrace it in a way as well, and good luck with everything.
Well, thank you so very much for the time today. We really appreciate it, and we would love for everyone here taking the time to watch this and soak up all of Christine's wisdom. If you're in the Columbus, Ohio area, we always say make sure that you take a moment and go out and check out the National Veterans Memorial and Museum. I mean, Dan and I've got a little bit of a stake, and Christine too, of being a part of the current museum exhibit there. But it is a wonderful place to see the veteran experience. And if you are not able to do that, you can also find the National Veterans Museum, Memorial and Museum online, and we hope that you would do that as well. So, Christine, thank you again so much. Dan, anything you got for the crew before we pop out of here?
No, I just to lean on what you said, thank you so much for sharing your stories, sharing some of your wisdom about transition, especially finding out ways that you can utilize your GI Bill. And I hope any veteran, family member of a veteran, service member who's about to transition takes the time to really look at education as kind of their next step after leaving service.
Absolutely. Thank you all.